Welcome to the Daily Review. This is Razak, Senior Trading Strategist here at CMTrading, and today is March 10th, 2025, and today is Monday morning. So looking at the highlights of the day, we're watching natural gas get a nice big gap up over 50 cents in less than 1 week. That's huge. But first, no major economic events scheduled for today. However, we do have corporate earnings for mega weight Oracle coming out today. So that's the big news. Now, looking at the market, starting out with the Forex signals, major pairs really unchanged after last week's big move to the upside versus the US dollar. And looking at the indices, the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ get a slight bounce, but the question is whether or not it's sustainable. Now, looking at commodities, oil gets a bounce at supportish level. And when we looked at the stocks, they're really mixed across the board with some bouncing more than others, for example, Meta. And lastly, looking at cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin gets a pause, or maybe even a bounce, but the question is whether or not it's sustainable. So let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. So here we go. First with the Euro USD. Now we did have that move upwards, and now we're consolidating at this upper area. The question is whether or not we're going to correct itself and we're going to go down. And that's everybody's question. We're making that kind of delineation right now. But the question is, what is going to be our supportist area? So I'd look for this as a technical, maybe a momentum trade, if anything else. And that's all I'd be looking at it right now, right? So the euro is on the top, GBP, USD, the stronger one. And if this goes, then the euro will definitely go. And that's one of the things you got to take into consideration. Now, it's another week and another low for the Turkish Lira. Just continuing making new record lows versus US dollar. That's nothing has changed. And lastly, looking at the Japanese yen, also getting stronger here versus the dollar. The question is whether or not we're going to bounce. This is supportish area, so keep that in mind as we're looking at here. Now jumping into commodities, crude oil jumping off of its supportish area, okay, at 66.5. We mentioned this last week. It was an easy short. Now looking at natural gas, a nice gap up, and it's holding on. We hit 484, which is huge. That's a big number, okay, especially if we do break this 5, okay, on the upside, then we could surely go back to 7, 8. This is huge numbers. I mean, just trading this in 1 week could have given you like $4,000 or $5,000 of money just buying and holding it, and just a simple trade. And you're not even, margining a lot of money. Only with $600, you can make $6,000. Okay, that's big money. That's 10 times as much. So keep that in mind. Now, looking at Meta, this is where it's at. This was the biggest gap. This was the biggest bounce. I mean, after this massive sell-off, we get this little of a bounce. Not very impressive. If you look at some of the other big ones, JP Morgan didn't get a bounce, okay? So market is really mixed here. We got some bounces, but some really nothing much, okay? And if we look at NVIDIA, which was a big one last week, which sold off, also got a little bit of a bounce here. So let's see if we see some sort of, correction in the markets as inflation is somewhat lower, but economic outlook has to be positive. And right now there's some demographic situations, Europe between Russia, America between Europe and Canada and China. So lots of unsettling environment that we find ourselves in demographically. Okay, so that's something that's unsettling. Now lastly, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Now Bitcoin got a bit of a bounce. Now you can't see it on a daily, but there we go. That's our bounce. And we hit 80K and we bounced off of it. If we do not sustain it, okay, if we break this 80K, we could see ourselves back to the 60,000-ish area. That could still happen. So keep this on the radar. We're just starting out the week. Oracle coming out with their corporate earnings today, so that should move the markets a little bit. This is Razak. I want to wish you guys a great trading day. Thank you.